So Tableau gives us a lot of functionality for taking a big data set and breaking it down into multiple pieces and then doing analysis on all these pieces and presenting those results to consumers. And most of the time this is a really good thing. This is exactly what we want to do. But in many cases, it's a little bit too much detail. We want to be able to do the analysis at some big scale, but then show users or highlight to users some small collection of the data that we might want to say, hey, these are slightly different or don't work quite the same way or something like this. So I know this is a little bit wishy-washy, so let's actually just like do an example together and see how it goes. So let's actually just open a new sheet, and here we're going to be asking a question that you might ask as a publisher, for instance, which is, does the number of pages impact the price point of the book? So do longer books sell for more, for instance? And let's see how it goes. So both pages and price are located in the edition datasheet, and so let's drag these up, and let's have price be our rows, and our pages be our columns. So notice that these are aggregated as the sum, and this is somewhat dangerous, and let's see why for a second. So right now we have the sum over all of these, the sum over the entire data set for the price, and the sum for the entire data set over the pages, and this is at the level of detail of edition right now. So we're at the edition level of detail. So I don't want just one data point. Let's do one data point for each book. So I'm going to drag title from the book datasheet into my detail, and now I've exploded these things out into a bunch of different pieces. One for each data point, or sorry, one data point for each book. But notice we're still at the sum, and the issue with this is that some books could have many, many different editions. They could have a paperback edition, they could have a hardcover edition, they could have another paperback edition, and because we're summing these things up, we may get a bad representation of how long the book is, because we're summing actually 4 different copies of the book up. So really what we want to do in all these cases is take the average instead. So now we're averaging over the level of detail of the view, which in this case is title is so we have author, and then we have title, and then we have edition, which is where pages and price come from. So we're averaging over all the editions of the book. So what this is saying, to put it in more concrete terms, is that Nothing But Capers, the book, on average across all of its edition has 390 pages, again on average, whether that's averaged against 2 hardcover versions and a paperback or whatever, and its average price is $32.99, averaged across all the different edition types. Now, it seems like there's something going on here, right? There's some kind of interesting trend. So let's actually add our trend line. So we'll go to Analytics, and we will take our trend line, and we will drag it, and we'll, all of these are interesting, but let's just do linear for right now. So there is a weak linear relationship between these variables, and basically what this is saying to us is that as the average price increases by 1, as the average number of pages increases by 1, the average price increases by about 0.7 cents on average, everything else equal. And the p-value here is 0.8, and 8%. And so what this is saying is there's about an 8.6% chance we would see data like this if there were no relationship between pages and price. This isn't super great, but it is, it's something. So let's just take it for what it's worth and see what's going on. Now you might ask yourself, is there something going on? Is this relationship holding for all the different types of books in the data set? So we have like children's books and romance books and mystery books, a whole bunch of different genres. Those genres are coded with the categorical variable genre in the book data sheet. Let's drag that to color, for instance, to break these things out. What we see then is a train wreck. So you can see some things going on, right? There are some interesting things here. Like for instance, we have 2 that now have negative slopes. That's kind of interesting. 2 genres that have negative slopes. We have a bunch that have kind of weakly positive slopes. We have one that's just very, very near 0. Or it actually is, the slope is in fact 0. There's a bunch going on here. My claim is that there's too much going on here. This is like a train wreck to show a user. So let's actually just highlight one piece here. And let's, instead of dragging this to color and making a different trend line for each one, let's just drag this to detail instead. That's not going to change anything on the view at all. It's just going to give us a little hack. And that hack is any variable, categorical or dimension variable that we have in our data space or in our visualization can be highlighted on. And so for instance, if we go up here to the highlight thing, highlight button, and we can select what we want to highlight on. I would just say all fields, allow us to highlight on all fields, and then we can select then from the fields that we have in our visualization which ones we actually want to highlight on. So let's go to genre and click the little arrow associated with it and say show highlighter. And now I can say I just want to show romance. I'm sorry, I just want to highlight romance. That's kind of an important distinction, right? And what this is saying is whereas there's an overall trend that's slightly positive, in the romance genre, there is zero trend. In fact, every romance book in this data set is exactly the same price. So this is just a way to highlight the fact that romance as a genre is behaving much differently than the overall collection of books without splitting out every possible genre into a different trend line and kind of overwhelming the user. You can imagine this highlighting has all sorts of interesting applications. It's not the greatest thing in the world because it only allows you to highlight on one characteristic at a time. Like I can't do romance in children's, for instance. There are other ways to do that type of thing, but it is worth exploring how this highlighting might help you tell the story a little bit more effectively to your users and draw their attention to the aspects of the data and its analysis that you want to emphasize the most.